All right, welcome to lesson 4.2, constant rates of change. The objective for this lesson is that I can recognize and represent proportional relationships between quantities. So a proportional relationship or rate of change, these are the same. They mean the same thing. We just use different terms sometimes. So the definition of a proportional relationship is that it has the same ratio for every column, and that is in a table. In that case down here, that means that each of these number pairs has the same relationship. The number of days to the amount earned would have the same relationship in each column, and we're going to get into that in our example here in a minute. So, to be proportional, it has to have the same ratio for every column in a table. The points on the graph have to create a straight line. If it's curved, it's not proportional. And lastly, the line of the graph goes through the origin, which is also known as the point 0, 0. It is the center of a graph. You're going to see this phrase, y equals mx. What this means is that y, whatever y means, is equal to the value of m times x. There's no multiplication symbol between m and x, so it has to be multiplication, though, because there's no other symbol. Multiplication is the only invisible operation. So this is y equals m times x. That'll come in handy towards the bottom of this note sheet. All right, let's look at an example. Callie earns money by dog sitting. Based on the table is the relationship between the amount Callie earns and the number of days a proportional relationship. Well, step one is to determine if the table goes through the origin. Does it go through 0? I'm going to start here, and I'm going to work my way backwards to the imaginary point of 0. So if I go from 48 to 32, how much am I taking away? Well, 8 minus 2 is 6, 4 minus 3 is 1, so we're taking away 16. If I go from 32 to 16, the difference between 32 and 16 is also 16, so I'm taking away 16. So if I take away 16 more, 16 minus 16 is 0. So yes, this does go through the origin. And we worked backwards to figure out what our value would be at 0. Step 2 is to find the ratio of y and x for all given values. In this case, we're going to make the amount earned, money, be y, and the number of days be x. Time is almost always our x value, or our independent variable. We are going to find the ratio of y to x, where y is on top and x is on bottom. So our amount earned is our y value, so I'm going to start with 16 over 1. And this is over 1, so we can't simplify this anymore. So we're going to leave it as is. Our next one, we have 32 over 2. And I want to know, what is that if we simplify it? What is the unit rate or the rate of change for this particular value? To turn 2 into 1, I divide by 2, which means I'm also going to divide 32 by 2, which gives me 16. So far so good. We have the same rate of change, the same unit rate. Point 3, we have $48 in 3 days. I want to know, what is the unit rate for that? We have to do 3 divided by 3 to get 1, which means we also have to do 48 divided by 3, which gives us 16. Point 4, we have $64 for 4 days. What is the unit rate for that? To turn 4 into 1, we divide it by itself, 4 divided by 4. Notice we're just dividing by the bottom number to turn it into a 1. So we also have to do 64 divided by 4, which gives us 16. And lastly, we have $80 for 5 days. We're going to find our unit rate. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 80 divided by 5 is 16. 16 over 1, 16 over 1, 16 over 1, 16 over 1, 16 over 1. So this is proportional because we get the same unit rate for each pair of points. We get the same ratio for each column, just like we set up here. Same ratio for every column, which means it's going to create a straight line, and we already know it goes through the origin 0, 0 because we checked. Cool. Now, how the heck do we turn that into an equation? So, we're going to write an equation in the form of y equals mx. In this case, we already talked about how x represents the number of days Callie worked, and y is to represent the amount of dollars. So essentially, we're going to say, so dollars earned is equal to m, or our rate of change. We could also call this our unit rate, as we learned in 4.1, times x, number of days. And when we write an equation, all we have to do is replace m. The rest of it stays the same. So we keep the y, we keep the equals. M is our rate of change, which we already talked about is 16 over 1. Remember, if we have a whole number over a 1, it's really just the whole number, 16. So we would say y, the money earned, is equal to 16 times the number of days, x. You might also see this without the multiplication sign, y equals 16x. So these are both the same thing. How much money she earns is equal to 16 times the number of days she works. So she's earning $16 per day. Go ahead and jump into your must-do and let us know if you have questions.